Welcome to the ChadBurn Show, brought to you by M. Chad Baldwin. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the ChadBurn Show. I am your host, ChadBurn, and we are back at it for another episode of the ChadBurn Show. This week, obviously, we're going to be talking about the big news coming out of the Eagles Philadelphia organization that had been the trade of Carson Wentz to the Indianapolis Colts, a big one that we knew was eventually going to happen after hearing numerous reports from Adam Schefter and many of those across the league. But we finally happened. He's gone to the Colts. It's going to be a trade for a third rounder this year and a second rounder conditional pick next year. That could be a first if Carson Wentz plays 75% of the snaps or 70% of the snaps and the Colts make the playoffs. But I figured that it would only be appropriate to bring on an Eagles fan to talk through this trade, figure out how we're feeling about it, and just the general vibe of a fan of the Eagles organization. So back on the pod, friend of the pod, Carlo Makarechi. How you doing, Carlo?
I'm good, Chad. I appreciate you having me on. I'm sorry we have to talk under these circumstances.
Yeah, I know. It's obviously tough. I think we were both fans of Carson Wentz. I know I was a big Carson Wentz apologist, so it makes sense that we would dive into this together. But I'll start off right off the bat, obviously. How you feeling about the trade? Do you think the Eagles won this one, or did the Colts win it? And, I mean, who's best positioned overall in this one?
Yeah, I think, my first personal emotion is just sadness. It's like I think that Carson Wentz was a very talented quarterback. The Eagles sort of first look at what a franchise quarterback could be since McNabb. It felt like when they drafted him, this was going to be, at least a decade of success. And I was personally a huge fan and somebody who did a ton for the city of Philadelphia, which I think has gotten lost in the shuffle a little bit. So I think like the Philadelphia community lost an important celebrity or player, which is important to me personally. I think my biggest feeling about the trade in general was just a sense of organizational failure. No matter, if you're a Carson Wentz defender till the end, or you still love Howie Roseman, or you're somewhere in the middle, like we can all admit that this is a embarrassing, dysfunctional last few years of how they handled the most important asset in sports, which is the franchise quarterback. And we were talking during the week that I've always sort of been proud that, despite not having a Super Bowl until recently in our lifetime, in the Jeffrey Lurie ownership, the Eagles have always felt like a well-run franchise, closer to the Steelers, the Ravens, the Saints, the Packers, than to the Jets or the Jaguars, or the organizations that can't seem to get it right. It seemed like they, good organizations don't not make mistakes. Every organization makes mistakes, but good organizations rebound from mistakes and don't compound mistakes and have sound planning. And I always felt like the Eagles were one of those organizations. Right. And now I'm not so sure anymore after what we saw. So I think the Eagles definitely lost in the situation. I think that, probably with the contract and all of the unknowns about Wentz, they probably got the best compensation in return that they could. Obviously, I think had they traded Wentz a year ago, even with the contract, he would have been worth at least the first round pick, probably more. Sure. They definitely sold him low. But it sounds like the situation was so toxic that this was their only option, which is damning. I think, the Colts took a risk. They are counting on the relationship between Carson and Frank Reich to replicate 2017. That point's been, hammered into the ground enough. I think the big winner is Carson Wentz. Obviously not an Eagle anymore. So I won't be as big of a fan, but I hope that he is able to turn his career around, because I think he has the potential to be a really great player. And I think now all Eagles fans now have to root for his success, or at least health, in 2021, so that we can hopefully get a first round pick next year.
That's the big thing, right? Like, obviously, like, you don't want to cheer on the Colts, but you'll for sure be cheering on Carson Wentz to make sure he at least gets the 75% of the snaps this year and does not get replaced by a Jacoby Brissett or what have you going on back there. No, I mean, I think I echo all the same sentiment on this one. I reposted another thing I posted on Instagram before about, and this was like in January, how I said like we have to reevaluate this season, how it was an absolute failure on this organization, top down, from the GM to the coaching to the players that were put on the field, and this just continues to show that. And I reposted because like I still feel the exact same way, even though Howie has moved on from Carson Wentz. Like it is just an embarrassment, I think, that we've gone to this point. I know Carson Wentz did not have a good season, and we're going to go through this. Like, it was a historically bad season, but it just seems that there's so many other factors around it that you can then attribute to why he possibly had this bad season. Like, I still think the talent's there. Like, I don't get all the haters who just don't like Carson's playing, because I think if you get past the mental errors, the ability not to prepare, his I guess his like second guessing and not pulling the trigger fast enough in a lot of these past situations, which is what got him into trouble this year. I mean, behind it all, the raw talent's there. I think it just needs to be shaped and molded, and maybe Frank Reich can do that.
Yeah, I think that he has a good chance of being successful. Again, I think, to think, even when he was an Eagle, like I didn't really ever expect him to be a top 2, top 3 player, not just quarterback, player in the NFL like he was in 2017. But he doesn't need to be. The Colts have made it to the playoffs the last like I think 2 of the last 3 years, right, with like pretty average quarterback play. And they just need Carson Wentz to be, a borderline top 10 guy, like he was last year, by the way. But he'll have much better weapons and probably a better O-line if healthy than the O-line he had here. They have a great running game in Indianapolis. They have a bunch of young, versatile receivers. We'll see if they're able to bring T.Y. Hilton back. But it's all about, I think, psychologically rebuilding Carson Wentz. And we've seen this happen time and time again in sports, where like a fresh start is sometimes just what an athlete kind of needs. But yeah, I think certainly, again, if he can get back to his 2019 form, he will be well worth, I think the Colts are paying him like $27 million this year. That's like Jimmy Garoppolo.
Yeah, he's going to be the 13th highest paid quarterback, I think, in the league based on the next 2 years. And the Colts get a sweet deal, right? Like the Eagles get hit with that $33.8 million dead cap hit, but the Colts have to pay him 2 years at the rate of a 13th, best quarterback in the league salary. And after 2 years, they can cut him with no issues. So if it doesn't work out, I mean, they also don't have to extend the contract. They don't really have to worry about anything. So I think the Colts, like, that's why I don't really understand, like, if you have Colts fans that are a little upset, because they really they're not losing anything here, right? Like, they weren't going to draft a quarterback this year. They're not going to be able to go out and afford a Deshaun Watson. They're not going to make a trade like that. So why not take a chance on Carson Wentz, who had his best season under Frank Reich? And as you point out, like, Phillip Rivers, before coming to the Colts, had 20 interceptions this season, right? Carson Wentz had 15. So, like, Frank Reich clearly knows what he's doing with these quarterbacks that are struggling the year before. And so Carson Wentz doesn't have to be a hero. He's just got to play decent. Like, I think the Colts could make a serious playoff push next year if Carson plays up to the 2018-2019 level he has.
Yeah, I think the Colts were probably like the 4th, 5th, maybe 6th best team in the AFC this year, with Phillip Rivers. So like they have the pieces to be a playoff team, potentially like a dark horse candidate in the AFC, if Carson Wentz just plays at the 13th or 14th best quarterback level, which is what he's getting paid to do. But we know that he can be better than that with Frank Reich. So that is the upside. So yeah, I mean, I would be, obviously I've shown my cards as a big Carson Wentz fan, but I'd be really happy if I were a Colts fan, because again, it's like low risk. Like you need someone to play quarterback. The upside is so high. And if you're Frank Reich and company, it could become a first round pick, but if you're making a deep playoff run, it's like the 27th or 28th overall pick anyway, and you've got your quarterback.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, like I really think the Colts went out of this situation. I'm so sad to see Carson Wentz gone. I mean, again, it wasn't going to work out. He just couldn't stay here. I mean, we've heard reports now that Carson Wentz and like Doug Peterson weren't talking for 8 to 10 weeks during the season. Adam Schefter reported this year. He clearly didn't trust Howie Roseman. He clearly didn't feel trust by the organization that they were going to have his best interests in mind. So I know he had to leave, but I guess, did you think a lot of people thought when they fired Doug Peterson and hired Nick Sirianni that they were obviously making a move to try and get Carson back and try and fix Carson, like, the quote unquote fix him and make him a great quarterback again? Did you think the move to bring Nick Sirianni in, like, did you think the Eagles were going to hold on to Carson Wentz, or did you think that, in the end he was going to get traded, like, as it went down?
This is my biggest question. This is the biggest, I think, or one of the biggest things that I point to in terms of organizational failure. Doug Peterson also had a terrible year in 2020, but you fired your only Super Bowl winning coach at 3 years after that Super Bowl, after his first non-playoff year since his first year, presumably to make your starting quarterback happy, and then the quarterback has to leave anyway. So what was the plan? Like, why didn't they just trade? Why didn't they get ahead of the Matthew Stafford trade and maybe even get more value for Wentz 3 weeks ago, or after the season was over anyway, before the Super Bowl, and hang on to Doug Peterson, who, has his flaws certainly, but, I trust more than a blank canvas in Nick Sirianni that we know nothing about. Like, I think Doug Peterson was owed one more year, and if the relationship was not mendable, again, a good organization should know that. And then why did we get rid of the coach? It really makes no sense to me.
I don't think there was a plan. Like that's the biggest, most annoying. Yeah, there was no freaking plan. Like they can say whatever they want, but I have zero faith at this point with Howie Roseman. Like, I just don't think that they are thinking any of this through, because clearly exactly. Like, if they had decided that Carson was the one that needed to go because it wasn't working out and they could get trade value for him, then, like you said, keep Doug Peterson at least, so that, if you have a young quarterback coming up, he's in a stable system and can kind of work off what he's already been introduced to in the league. And namely, we talk about Jalen Hurts or whoever you bring in. But, I was just shocked to see that they get rid of the coach very last minute as well, because all of a sudden he didn't answer, I guess, a question right with Lori. And now they're getting rid of the quarterback. And like, we all heard the reports that it was going to happen, but it just seems like they have no idea what they're doing, and they're absolutely just winging it. Like, that is, like you said, the Eagles have been a great franchise for most of our memory here. Early 2000s, they were consistent contenders. They were getting to the NFC Championship game all through up recently. I mean, the only bad years with Chip Kelly. And then obviously we make the Super Bowl, but they look now like an organization that's completely flying by the seat of their pants. And I don't know, it makes me nervous. Like, I've talked about getting more draft capital, but how am I supposed to know that they're going to actually use that draft capital correctly? Like, I don't know if they're going to bring in new talent. What are they doing?
Well, and you know what the first sign I thought for me, where I was like, my eyebrow raised, I was like, okay, because I was a big Howie Roseman fan too. I think that he probably actually doesn't get enough credit for building that Super Bowl team out of the ashes of whatever Chip Kelly tried to do. But the first thing that sort of made me pause, and we talked about this at great length at one of your podcasts last spring, was, again, in retrospect, even if Jalen Hurts ends up being the starter and playing well, did they have a chalkboard somewhere at the NovaCare complex with all of the scenarios mapped out? Carson is great, so we trade Hurts. Carson is so we keep Hurts as the backup. Carson is terrible. Like, they didn't see this as a possible outcome, because they clearly didn't have a plan. So which makes me think even more that the Hurts pick, which I stand by saying, was a disastrous pick, regardless of, how he plays.
Right. Still a terrible pick.
Just a terrible pick because it wasn't part of a plan, and that bore itself out in the next year, which is really scary for the future.
Yeah, because that's the thing. Like it doesn't matter how it's going to work out now. It's like that pick, from the standpoint of, you signed your franchise quarterback to a long-term extension. So what you should be doing is building weapons around that franchise quarterback. You don't find his backup. Like, you don't do that. It's the same idea that I've had this conversation with people as well. Like, when the Packers brought in Love, right? That was also a terrible pick, Because even though maybe you're thinking about the future 3 years down the line and you really like Jordan Love, like clearly the moment is now and Aaron Rodgers had that talent. Imagine if Aaron Rodgers had one other star wide receiver alongside Devontae Adams during that playoff push in the NFC Championship game. Like the difference it would have made. And so I think like that move has just been so stupid because now people are like, oh, at least we have the quarterback, we're fine now. But at the same time, like, is Jalen Hurts the answer? I don't know. I mean, he had 27% completion rate in his last game. Like that doesn't seem to fit. And I think you're right. Like they did not think that Carson Wentz was going to be this bad. There's no way they could have predicted that. They gave him the extension of that money. And I think that this goes to, and something I'll bring up with you now, Howie Roseman has very much been a person who can build a team, but has no idea how to maintain or sustain success. Your thoughts on that statement?
Yeah, I mean, that is evident now. I think again, every football analysis, every NFL analysis of the last 25 years is skewed a little bit because of what the Patriots have done. I take some solace in, reflecting on like other quote unquote smart franchises that have, not made it back to the Super Bowl. It's incredible that like in this generation of great quarterbacks, we're going to see Drew Brees only go to and win one. We're going to see Aaron Rodgers probably only go to and win one. Peyton Manning with the Colts go to 2, win 1, obviously then with Denver again. But, it is so hard to win Super Bowls and it is hard to sustain winning, over continuously rather. So to answer your question, I think that's right. I think it is difficult, but the cornerstone of doing it is signing your franchise quarterback. And yep. I thought that they had that, I thought that they signed that contract. Carson never played a snap under the extension. He was on his 5th-year option.
I know, it's crazy.
It's pretty wild. So yeah, I mean, if I'm putting my, I'm taking off my objective analyst hat and putting on my Eagles fan hat, Howie Roseman is the guy who rescued the Eagles from the Chip Kelly mess, which at the time seemed also like a total failure. And in 2 years they won the Super Bowl. So, he hasn't done anything in like the last 2 years, I think, to earn any sort of trust or benefit.
Sure.
But if I have to watch Eagles every Sunday, right? And I have to be optimistic about something. Is that and actually this is an interesting point that I've heard some national commentators point out that obviously in retrospect the contract is what it is, and the Eagles regret the contract. But good organizations, when they make mistakes, get out of them quickly and without emotion. So if I'm going to be optimistic, it's that it didn't work out with Carson. We can, for whatever reason it just wasn't working. And they got out of it and they have a huge dead cap hit this year, which is a wasted year anyway. And then it's done. Then Carson Wentz is fully off the book. And you just pray that Howie Roseman can go back to some of his better instincts, because the owner has made it clear that he's probably here to stay at least for the next 2 to 3 years through this next rebuild.
Yeah, but then I like your point on good franchises are able to cut their losses and move forward. But then I think the opposite, because clearly the way that the Eagles are posturing, it's been so frustrating that they have continuously come out and been non-committal of whether or not Carson Wentz was staying or going. Like, if they were a franchise that realized that Carson Wentz had to go, you'd think they would have started opening up, be like, yes, we're going to start looking in. Carson Wentz, obviously, is requested to go. We're going to start taking offers and listening to them. Instead, they use the same, Jeffrey Lurie and Howie Roseman use the same language every year, which is like, oh, no, he's part of the team. We really love him. But, if someone to reach out and give us an offer, of course we listen, but our future is with them. I hate that negotiating style that they use, because they just consistently use the same language every year about every player, that Alshon Jeffrey, Deshaun Jackson, Carson Wentz. I wish that they were a good organization, they would just move on and know. This is what they have to do and move on. Instead, they are constantly just testing the waters without making any decisions. It drives me insane, man. I can't take it anymore with Howie. That.
Well, and it's also disingenuous and all of these reports that have come out in the last week of Carson Wentz was really bad in the locker room, or Carson Wentz refused to answer Doug Peterson's phone calls, or, Marcus Hayes in the Philadelphia Inquirer wrote this article basically saying it was all Carson. This is all Carson Wentz's fault. Like, the Eagles are where they are today because of Carson Wentz.
Right.
And, some of the Schefter tweets, and I have no reason to sort of doubt the sourcing or the sincerity of the reporters like Schefter, like Marcus Hayes at the Inquirer. But like, the Eagles always do this. They drop little like sources, unnamed sources from within the organization. Like, we know that that's Howie Roseman. Just like when Chip Kelly cut Deshaun Jackson, 5 years ago, the first time, it was like somebody leaked that he had maybe been in a gang, which is like racist and problematic on its own. But like, it's the same kind of thing. It's like save face by like muddying the player. And I know a lot of organizations do it. That's just the nature of the game. But it really frustrates me with, like, again, like, Carson Wentz wasn't perfect. I'm sure he wasn't the easiest person to go to work with. But let's not pretend he was Terrell Owens.
Yeah, exactly.
Tearing up the locker room. Like, he was leading the team in prayers after every game. Like, he's a good guy. So and you can kind of see the trail of breadcrumbs leading to Howie Roseman's office with these sort of leaks and stuff. But I guess, again, I'm mourning the loss of Carson Wentz. I'm rooting for him, but I'm relieved in a way that this year will be what it is, and then it's completely a fresh start. So that's all I can.
Yeah. I mean, I stand by it there. I think I totally agree. Yeah, it's just been tough. It's been tough trying to just realize that this is the reality, that Carson had to go, that he's now on the Colts. Like, this is the new reality that we live with. And I'm just trying to build up at least some confidence that this team could figure it out. But, I'm scared with Howie Roseman having all this draft capital, like what he's going to do with those moves, because there's been some reports that's interesting as well, like talking about how, and similar to those reports that it's all like Carson Wentz's fault, is that the organization tried to draft to help Carson Wentz out, right? Like, if you look over the last 4 years or so, every first round pick has been an offensive player, right? There's been no defensive players drafted in our first 2 rounds. They've been primarily offensive players, whether it's a line, wide receiver, running back. And that terrifies the shit out of me, because look what was on the field after they tried to build around Carson Wentz. They tried to give him the weapons and the material he needed to be successful, and yet the weapons they gave him were garbage. J.J. Arcega-Whiteside. I mean, we'll see about Rager, but passing on Jefferson, passing on DK Metcalf, Dillard with the injuries now. Mailata, who looks like at least he's turning into a decent lineman, but, that as well. And then giving these aging contracts to, obviously, Alshon Jeffrey, Deshaun Jackson. Like, I just have no trust that Howie Roseman can bring in the right, correct weapons to build a successful team again because of his track record. Do you think I'm overreacting with this? Like, if we give him this many draft, like, say he's got the first round because Carson Wentz plays, so we have 2 first round picks next year. We get a few other trades and bring in drafts. Like, should I believe that Howie Roseman can find the next Carson or next quarterback to bring into his franchise?
No, I mean, even when Howie was at the peak of his powers in like 2016 through 2018, his great moves were trading and sort of mid-level free agent signings, not really drafting. And that's always been a criticism of his, that he's very inconsistent with his drafts. Obviously, the last 2 have been look pretty bad so far, with the exception of Miles Sanders. We'll see what Rager becomes. But the argument that they helped Carson as much as they could have, like, maybe they tried, but what's his name? The wide receiver for the Buffalo Bills, who went to Maryland, whose name is now escaping me. Stephon Diggs was on the trade market. The wide receiver for the Arizona Cardinals, who got traded, DeAndre Hopkins, available. Like, those are guys that we know could have helped the Eagles immediately. And 2 seasons ago, there was no Eagles wide receiver with over 500 yards. This year, the Eagles' leading wide receiver was Travis Fulgham. who basically was the best wide receiver in the NFL for like 4 weeks in the middle of the season. And then they like gave him 20% of the snaps for some reason afterwards. So, the Eagles have always been, have been a team that relies on passing to the tight end while Carson Wentz has been here. That's been the most consistent source of receptions. And we saw probably a predictable dip in Zach Ertz's performance, and no wide receivers on the outside that could help supplement that. So no, you are 100% right to be scared. The only way out of this after the dead cap hit this year is to draft well, to hit on 50-60% of your picks, particularly your top 3 round picks. And I don't know why anyone would have confidence. Maybe they get lucky. Maybe Howie figures something out. That's the only thing we can hope for. But if we were to predict, I'm terrified about the 6th overall pick. So I don't know.
Yeah, so I think it's because you brought up, I'll bring it as well. You saw that obviously Zach Ertz is expected to ask to be released by the Philadelphia Eagles. So that's another hard hit too. I mean, we're losing Carson, we're losing Zach Ertz. I mean, it looks like, again, like the Eagles are turning into an organization where players want to leave rather than come to and play. And that's so sad. It's so terrifying.
Yeah, no, it is. And I think this is probably a good opportunity actually to unload some of those bigger contracts, whether by cut or by trade, the contracts that are clogging up the cap that probably aren't worth what they were when you signed them. I think Zach Ertz is on the other side of his career, unfortunately.
Right.
Probably top 10 Eagles pass catchers of all time, Super Bowl champion. But again, like being going back to the thought that smart organizations move on when it's time to move on. I wouldn't mind getting rid of Zach Ertz's $8 million, or even maybe Fletcher Cox, maybe not this year, but in the future, trying to move on from him. Like it is sort of time to try to sort of reset. I think. I also viewed this year as like the Super Bowl window closed. Like the Super Bowl window opened in 2017. It was probably still open in 2018. It probably started to close in 2019, and it slammed shut this year. And we have to be honest about that. I think Howie Roseman probably and Jeffrey Lurie know that. So now it's time to build for the next window. And the first step in any Super Bowl window is finding out who your quarterback is. So we're starting from scratch there.
And that's, it's just so sad to be back at that kind of situation. So obviously starting to scratch building up. Before I move to the other topic I want to talk about, which is a little Jalen Hurts, a little conversation around that. What are your thoughts? How do you feel about Nick Sirianni, the new head coach for the Philadelphia Eagles?
I'm shrugging my shoulders. Like, I don't know. Not one of like the top names on anyone's lists 2 months ago. I like that he comes from the right tree. Sounds like players really responded well to him when he was with the Chargers and then in Indianapolis. There seems to be a trend now of young offensive minds. But anyone who thinks they have an opinion, like, positive or negative, that he's going to be great or is going to be terrible, there's no way of knowing. It seems like he's putting together like a very, very young, smart staff. But look, we'll see. I mean, I don't have high hopes for the Eagles this year. So, and I hope that they put on at least a competent enough offense for us to be able to judge whether Sirianni can coach or not. But, not a lot of people had Doug Peterson on their list either. And people were kind of meh on that hire. And he won a Super Bowl by beating, Bill Belichick. Weird things happen. I'm like pretty meh. I'm like wait and see right now.
Yeah, I think similar boat. I think I wasn't impressed by his press conference, like the opening press conference. I mean, he was clearly nervous. It's clearly tough, and I won't hold that against him. Like he's allowed to be nervous going through that. But I definitely was, a little disappointed by how the presser went, and I thought he could have done a little better. But we'll see. I hope for the best with him. I hope we give enough weapons and that he's able to succeed. But then that's a great segue into the weapons he has, and obviously The main weapon that's going to be discussed through this offseason is Jalen Hurts. Now, before I give any of my takes on him and so on, I'll go to you. Do you think Jalen Hurts is the answer for this franchise, or do we have a lot more to learn?
I think we need to learn. I think even people that are huge Jalen Hurts fans, he was a great college football player, has a lot of really positive traits, but was really inconsistent, like many rookies are in his 4.5 games that he played. Obviously his best game was the Saints game, but if you look at his stat line, he really kind of just managed that game. The Saints weren't ready for him to escape the pocket. And he made good throws, good decisions, mostly good reads. I thought that was a really well coached game by Doug Peterson. And then after that, he tried to mount a little comeback against the Cardinals, showed more explosivity, but then was really inconsistent. Other than that, and I don't think it's fair to judge him just on that. I think, I hope, and this, I think we'll get into what you wanted to talk about also, is like, if it's me, I am naming Jalen Hurts the starter. I am giving him a full offseason with, this is our guy. It sounds like he's already getting receivers together in the offseason to work. He seems like, whatever you think about his play on the field, it seems like a great character guy, a leader. We saw that, leaving Alabama, going to Oklahoma. And I think the Eagles probably need a little bit of that. So I think that he deserves to have a full offseason and a full season to see what he is. I have my sort of concerns. I think that his sort of arm talent, which is what was said about him, coming in, that it's ceiling, maybe not elite. He's obviously fast and shifty, which is exciting. But I need to see him do it for 16 games. But I think he's earned the opportunity to have one season to show what he's got.
Yeah, I think same. My biggest concerns obviously is the arm strength. I think that, we saw the legs. I think it's incredible. I think he's able to obviously feel the pressure and get out of it, dangerous situations quickly. But the arm strength just didn't impress me at all. And I felt, we saw that the completion rate was going down. Now, there's obviously usually the first year rookie anomaly, so you need them to get a season under their belt and really start developing and getting used to the speed of an NFL offense. But this is why we'll go to the conversation. I'm still just not convinced that he's the answer for the long run, right? There are moments where you see in quarterbacks, you go, yeah, that guy could be a franchise quarterback. Even when Kyler Murray had a rough start of the season, he still had these moments where you're like, that's the guy to be franchise quarterback. Jalen Hurts strikes me as someone that could struggle and could have some issues. Now, everyone said the same thing about Lamar Jackson, so who knows? It could easily be coached up, and hopefully next year on he's the right guy to get that done. But what I think is, if the Eagles are sitting at 6 and there's a quarterback that comes available that they really like, who's to say they don't draft him? I think there's a high chance the Eagles could draft a quarterback at that 6th spot if someone were to drop that they like. If it's a Fields, a Trey Lance, what have you, they might want to bring in a quarterback. And if they do, then I think you capitalize on the moment and you trade Jalen Hurts to a team that's struggling in cap space that could take on a rookie contract and someone that is a young, dynamic player like Jalen Hurts, and then continue just to build up draft capital and try and rebuild this team completely, just blow it all up. Your thoughts on, how do you feel if we were to say move on for Jalen Hurts as well, try and get more draft capital, and the Eagles go ahead and draft a quarterback this year?
Yeah, the one thing I'll add just quickly that occurred to me when you were talking, like also no off season really, which is huge for a rookie.
No off season. Yeah, absolutely.
No off season, 4 games. Just anyway, everyone knows that. But to answer your question, do I think that is likely with the Eagles? Yes, they love quarterbacks. They're a quarterback factory. Not what I would hope they do. I hope that they get either an offensive lineman,
right,
preferably a wide receiver for me. I think there's a couple really good ones that will be there at 6, maybe even a cornerback to pair opposite Slay. But yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I think not only if somebody falls, they could take him at 6. I think they could package just their 2nd round pick and their extra 3rd round pick now from the Colts and move up to 4 or 3 to get a Justin Fields or whoever they like. I don't like that approach unless, again, like I don't watch a lot of college football. I'm not a scout unless you're like positive that this is like the guy that is going to, change your franchise for the next 10 years, which is what they thought about Wentz, but that's neither here nor there. I I think that this is the year that you start to you fill other holes, and there are a lot of them, and see what you have in Hurts, and then next year hopefully you have 2 first-round picks. You'll have more cap space. You can go sign a veteran if Hurts is not the answer, or you can go move up and make your move then. But yeah, I think that probably the most likely scenario is that they do draft a quarterback in the first round. Not what I would do. I think that Hurts has earned the opportunity to try. And like, again, this is not something that we can measure like with stats and concrete things, but certainly a part of the Carson Wentz story is Nick Foles winning a Super Bowl, Carson getting hurt again the next year, Nick Foles leading the team to the playoffs. And then when Nick Foles is finally gone, they draft this very high profile, well-known college athlete to compete with him. So why are we in a rush to do that again? Is my question.
Right. But I mean, then
Fields, let's say it's Justin Fields, right? Will be competing with Jalen Hurts, and like competition is like definitely good. And maybe Carson Wentz wasn't as strong mentally as he should have been. But at a certain point, you are also doing your team a disservice, particularly if we're going to pass on, like a Jamar Chase, who was better than Justin Jefferson at LSU 2 years ago, and could change the Eagles in other ways for a generation. So that's where I'm at.
Yeah, I mean, I think, and I want to preface this again, right? Like, I'm not saying that Jalen Hurts can't play in this league. I think, he deserves every right to get a chance. I think he's got talent. I think he could be really good. And of course, if say the Eagles were to trade him, I think it'd be typical fashion that both Carson Wentz and Jalen Hurts could have an MVP season next year, and he's not on the Philadelphia Eagles. But I mean, my thoughts around is just more like, if you're able to package right now, like say get Jalen Hurts out there, you get more draft capital, you move up, you get the quarterback you think for the future right now, because this is obviously a very quarterback heavy draft. You get a quarterback now, you get more capital with Jalen Hurts going out. Then you just start Nate Sudfeld, and now you have a whole season where you're only going to win a couple of games. You're probably going to be in line for the first overall pick or second overall pick the next year, and you have more than likely the first round pick from the Colts. I mean, you could be putting yourself in a great position to just continue to build up around a young quarterback that you could bring in this year. And the only reason I say is because you're Justin Fields, you're Trey Lance. I mean, they look incredible. And now the problem with Trey Lance is he comes from the same school as Carson Wentz. So, do we want to go down that road again? But it was, everything I've read about Trey Lance, for example, it really gets me excited. Like, there is so much hype around Trey Lance. Like, they really like this guy. And I think he could be available at that spot. So that's why I think you bring him in, you start Sudfeld, he sits for a year. You have no rush to be good as a team. You just continue to build capital. The only risk you have is you're losing out another year of Lane Johnson being dominant. Brandon Brooks, though, will still be healthy. You continue to work on Dillard. You get Mailata. You continue to build that line up. You then will look at, probably drafting more on the defensive side of the ball. That's my whole scheme. And that's why, and it's terrible because obviously I'm going to be looked at as Sixers tanking mentality. But I mean, it could work. And it just why waste having a mediocre year next year when you could just have a bad year and just rebuild through the next 2 years?
Trust the process, Chad. I love it.
That's what I mean. Bring it to the birds.
Your Giants fans, listeners will be happy to have an opportunity to take their anger out on Sudfeld twice next year, if that happens. But by the way, I think Sudfeld is a free agent, so they'd have to sign him. Interestingly enough.
Yeah, but what's Sudfeld gonna go for, right? Like he could sign it for $3-4 million. Like there's no way he's getting big money. Like it's insane.
You're right. Yeah, look, I mean, who knows? I see your point. I guess, yeah, if there's somebody that they love and they can get at least a second round pick back for Hurts. I just don't want to have first round quarterback and Hurts on the team at the same time.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think you can do both. Like, I totally agree. I think either you plan to ship Hurts out to get more assets, more draft capital, you get a quarterback this year, and then you just keep building, or you build with, get the wide receiver, get a lot of help this year, and you build around Jalen Hurts and see how he can do, and then, reevaluate at the end of the year. I agree. Those are the two paths. You can't do both, 100%.
I'm with you. I think I would still take the conservative approach and see what you have in Hurts and take the wide receiver or the corner at 6. But Howie Roseman, not a conservative guy, so I think we'll have a lot to talk about.
Oh my God, the most infamous line that ever came out of Howie Roseman was that stupid quarterback factory line. I still nightmares over that. Awful.
That's really bad.
Well, all right. So I think we covered most of it, not all of it. Wentz, the trade, everything to Indianapolis Colts, how we feel about it, winners, losers, Nick Sirianni, the whole season as a whole, and everything else, and obviously Jalen Hurts for this year. Any other closing thoughts? Anything else you want to bring about for the Eagles that just irking you right now?
Yeah, no, it's again. I'll finish where I started. It's sad. It's really disappointing. But I just because I know you have a lot of NFC East team listeners who are probably so excited about the dumpster fire that we're seeing in Philadelphia. The folks in Vegas, who I trust a lot, still like the Eagles to win the Super Bowl at better odds than the Washington football team or the New York football Giants. And we know the Cowboys always tank. They don't have a quarterback under contract either. And if they do get him under contract, he's got a bad leg now. So go Birds as always, Chad. Eagles are winning the Super Bowl this year. So that's all I got.
They're going to win it every year, right? All right, my last one I'll give to you. How many more years does Howie Roseman have till he gets the boot?
I think 2. I think he's going to be given 2 years, and then either they're still middling and he gets fired, or they're doing well, and then we have Howie Roseman for the rest of our lives.
I just want to know which dead body Howie Roseman buried for Jeffrey Lurie, or what photo he has that has kept him.
It's like Putin and Trump. Something's going on.
We can't connect it, but we know there's got to be something going on. No, of course. Well, Carlo, I want to say thank you so much for coming on the show again. It helps, this was therapeutic. This is what I needed, just to talk through this shitty season and this shitty situation around Carson Wentz. So thank you for coming on and talking us with it.
Anytime, Chad. Stay strong.
Thank you, man. Well, that's going to do it for the ChadBurn Show. As said, thank you again to having Carlo on. It's always a pleasure having to talk some birds. Hitting on the Carson Wentz trade, hitting on this season, Jalen Hurts, all of it. Making sure we just continuously talk about the Eagles now. It is obviously the end of the NFL season, so this is probably the last discussion we'll have on the Eagles until we get to the draft and then further into the offseason. So we'll have plenty more on it later on, but we'll be shifting our focus, as you guys all know, to the 76ers, to the Embiid MVP season he's having, and to everything else going on there. So continue to check in to the ChadBurn Show and seeing all the new content we'll have coming up in the next few weeks. But until next time, have a good evening and good night. Thank you for listening to the ChadBurn Show. Remember to check out all new episodes every Monday at 7 p.m. on Google Podcasts, Apple iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, and all major platforms where you listen to your podcast. If you'd like to get in touch with me and want to send in your questions or requests for topics to discuss on the show, you can email chadburn.show@gmail.com. All episodes have video recorded, which is then posted to our YouTube channel, The ChadBurn Show. Be sure to subscribe to us where you get your podcast or on our YouTube channel to stay up to date with all our new content. You can also follow the show on Instagram @ChadBurn Show and on Facebook, The ChadBurn Show, to see clips from previously recorded episodes and information on all upcoming shows.